Hello, hello, hello. Thank you all so much for joining us for a special edition of the One Hood Power Hour. You know, this weekend we have watched, whether it was from the elections, the Juneteenth celebrations, to even the trials for the Olympics, a plethora of Black girl magic that has just like taken over. And we wanted to keep that going with talking with some great, amazing women who are running for statewide office here in Pennsylvania. And they all just happen to be dynamic, powerful, educated, community oriented, amazing people who also just happen to be Black women who are running for office. Some are the first women in their position to actually win for the positions that they're running for. And so we wanted to have like that conversation and just talk to them about what does it mean to be a candidate at this time? What are some of the things that have motivated them to stay in the race, to get involved in politics? And so we're going to be having a conversation with them in a couple of minutes. We know there was a lot of things happening. I have said I will, not talk about, sports, and the things that have happened, in the past like 24 hours, but a lot of things, are happening, globally here in Pittsburgh. We have the vice president, stop by and just talking about some, investments that are coming within the region. So there's a lot of stuff happening, in Pennsylvania. We are also on the verge of starting the child care tax credits. So if you are a parent, you are a primary caregiver of a minor, you're supposed to be getting tax credits. I believe it's maybe $300 a month, if I recall the number. Monthly, you're supposed to be getting that per child. So there's a lot of things that are happening on the political landscape that people have to look forward to. There's still an election in November. This is where our candidates are joining us today. And for their insights on what's going on this past couple of weeks and what's upcoming, I'm going to turn it back over to my co-host, Kahari Mosley.
Thank you. Yeah, so much, to talk about. I think, one of the things I wanted to mention was, Senator Bob Casey, who was recently on the Sunday Night Sit Down, posted a very interesting graphic on his Facebook page just about, how far we've come, in the pandemic since the Biden administration took office on January 20th, and how we've gone, from, hundreds of thousands, of cases, down to in the thousands. Daily death rates are now in the hundreds, when we were at like, I think, 3,000 a day, 4,000 a day. And now, obviously, one death, is too many. But, we're really seeing, our country, really start to turn a corner, in the pandemic as, the Delta variants, really start to spread around the world and in, communities with lower, vaccination numbers. We are a week away from fully opening up. I think this past weekend was kind of a sneak preview, for those who were in the Berg and got a chance to catch Rakim or Big Daddy Kane, or went to check out my peoples, Big Phil, Black Steel, and Selecta over at the Thunderbird Cafe. It was like 2019 up in there, and I trust that, that there was herd immunity in the building. I trust that, the folks that didn't have their mask on were vaccinated like myself. I hope so, but it did feel good, just to be amongst people. There was definitely a lot of hugs, a lot of handshakes, a lot of things that we just haven't done, because I think people were just so happy to be amongst people, so that was, I think really powerful for me. I also want to give a shout out to City Councilman Corey O'Connor. I was not able to make Rakim and Big Daddy Kane because me and my wife Chelsea were invited to his wedding celebration. So congratulations to Corey, Katie, and to the soon to come new addition that they announced. They're having a child as well. Shout outs to him. And there was definitely a lot of politicos in the building that night, from across, the spectrum, from Councilman Coghill to Councilwoman Deb Gross to Mayoral Chief of Staff Dan Gilman to County Executive, Rich Fitzgerald. It was a who's who, of Pittsburgh politics in the building. So shout out also to Lynette Letterman, who works, and Stan Letterman, who hosted in their wonderful house on Squirrel Hill, and Lynette Letterman, who folks know has been very involved in Pittsburgh politics for many, many years, from Bob O'Connor, to Doug Shields to now with Corey. So, I kind of went, brought the joy to the opening of the show tonight, to kind of change it up. But I'm gonna pass it to my colleague Ryan White to get his hot takes for this week.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kahari. Yeah, first of all, I know, Miracle, you said you weren't going to talk about any of the sports stuff, but I'll bring it up real quick because I watched some of that game last night, and that was incredible. So congratulations to your Atlanta Hawks. Sorry to our guests tonight who are from Philadelphia. Hope it's not too crazy over there right now. But yeah, congrats to the Hawks and to Atlanta. That was amazing. Yeah, so we had that over the weekend. As Kahari mentioned, there were a lot of really dope events around the city for Juneteenth. And then I wanted to go back real quick to the one point you were making as far as that graphic Senator Casey posted about the COVID numbers declining. Again, we are going, the full mask mandate for everyone, vaccinated, unvaccinated, is ending next week. COVID cases are way down, deaths are way down. So, that pandemic really is on the decline. But, a lot of the residual effects of that pandemic still continue to be long reaching. And, sticking with that public health front, another public health crisis related to that, that's really been on the rise, is related to the influx of fentanyl and a lot of different substances. It's, traditionally been found mostly in opioids, but has recently, within the past year, been commonly found in a much wider array of substances. And we've seen a massive increase in fentanyl-related overdoses, in Pittsburgh, statewide and nationwide over the past year. I believe it's up almost 30% in Allegheny County in the past year. So I just wanted to put out that like public health, or that public safety announcement real quick. The prevention point in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia has a lot of different resources to allow folks to test those substances, to allow folks to get, naloxone and Narcan, to practice harm reduction and prevent overdoses in those situations. So I think, as we move away from COVID and can shift our focus to other public health issues and issues in general, that's a really important one to keep an eye on and advocate for resources towards.
Yeah, definitely. That's super, super important. But just to touch base, on sports. I was actually at Young Brothers Bar last night for their Father's Day celebration. Shout out to him. Shout out to the Bill Henry band that killed it as usual. And that was wild watching the end of that game, man. It was just wild, man. And, I'm a person who has spent a lot of time in Philadelphia. I have very close friends from Philadelphia. Went to college with a ton of people from Philadelphia. So I can only imagine. I know how much they love their Sixers. You know what I mean? They love the Phillies, they love the Eagles, but, that like Philadelphia loves the Sixers, man. Like that's their squad for real. I feel like, I could be wrong. I feel like
I wouldn't bet that they love Ben Simmons at the moment. But
No, definitely. I mean, I think my favorite meme was, it's like, if you ever feel useless, just think about Ben Simmons shooting sleeve. So yeah, like the Ben Simmons meme.
No, listen. you made it to the finals, right? You should still be like, people should be like happy and excited. You had the finals, you had the semifinals, you had this like really fun, even like, you were able to make it. A lot of teams didn't make it that far. So I think it's like, I know, like, as a non-athlete, I'm like, just enjoy the experience. But I feel like, people have good days and bad days. You don't know what athletes are going through. And I don't want to like, because Ben's been going through a lot. He's been getting a lot of hate. We all have good days and bad days, right? Last night wasn't his night, but maybe next year will be, right? And so it's positivity.
It's just tough. You're the top seed, you get knocked out.
Yeah, Miracle. I don't think you're being enough of a sore winner right now. You should be taking at least a couple days just to brag before you get back to that mentality.
Listen, Shea Butter Jones, who's from Pennsylvania, who has a eatery he just opened down here in Atlanta, was like, he's charging all Hawks fans an extra 20%, right? So like, I think that there's a lot of stuff happening. I just, I don't want to just because we're rivals temporarily doesn't mean it always has to be negative. It can be fun sometimes and positive. That's it.
Yes, but it should be, a interesting, kind of Final Four. You use the NCAA basketball metaphor. This was not the 4 teams, that folks were expecting, to be left. You know what I'm saying? No Brooklyn, no LA, no Philly. Those are 3 of the 4 teams that people definitely thought, would still be in it. So, shouts out to Milwaukee. I got mad peoples in Milwaukee. Shouts out to Biko. You know what I mean? They're all go Bucks, go Bucks. So they're really excited. So this is Giannis's opportunity. You know what I mean? Like Giannis was in this opportunity. He was in the same position Ben Simmons and them are in right now, like the last 2 years, being a top seed, falling short. So, this is his opportunity to kind of, to redeem, himself. And then, I don't know if they've made any announcements about Chris Paul yet, but, I mean, how many times has Chris Paul been written off in the last 5 years? You know what I'm saying? And now he's in the mix, bringing back an old school style of basketball that I, as a middle-aged curmudgeon, appreciates a lot more than, say, Trae Young's style of basketball, even as immensely talented as Trae Young is. Just the mid-range game of Chris Paul in the field, generalship that he brings to the table is like, that's the basketball I remember, from the 1980s and 1990s, but it's going to be very interesting to watch how the rest of this goes down. Like, is Kawhi going to be able to come back? Shouts out to Terrence Mann, who has a Pittsburgh connection through Eddie Benton, well-known basketball star from Pittsburgh. I played high school ball with him. He went to the University of Vermont and actually just was announced as the assistant women's basketball coach at Mississippi State. But his wife, his current wife is Terrence Mann's mother. And, so I was hitting him up on Facebook, like, man, your stepson is out here killing him tonight. You know what I mean? Dropped 39. So, like, all roads lead back to Pittsburgh. There's always a Pittsburgh connection in every story. It's like the Forrest Gump of cities.
Of course. But as we wrap up and move to our guests, also just want to shout out Sha'Carri Richardson, who has just been taking over, talking about being unapologetically Black, queer, young, and just determined and dedicated and persevering. I just want to shout out to that young lady and just send her all the love and support. We love to see people winning at the top of their game and just being their authentic selves. And I guess with that, we'll turn to our panel of dynamic women. I think this is the first that all the Black women on this panel are actually attorneys. So every Black woman who's on the show today is actually an attorney. Ryan will be joining, us in the legal community pretty soon. So we're very excited about that. Kahari is married to an attorney. So I guess this is a whole a legal show this evening. But over the past few months, we've been really talking about people getting to know their rights, getting to know their candidates, and making sure they understand that every person running impacts their lives and their livelihood, and that nothing more so than judges. Whether it's if you want to get married, you want to get divorced, you want to buy property, you want to adopt, you're having a dispute with a neighbor, you may have turned up a little bit and got it, arrested. If you got in a parking citation, you may want to own a business and file LLC. You may, questions, all types of things. Judges are an integral part of our lives and one of the most important people who we vote for. And in Pennsylvania, all of the judges in the Pennsylvania judiciary are actually people who you vote. In some districts, in some other states, judges are appointed, but here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, you're actually able to vote for your judges. And so we wanted to talk with some women who are running for office all across Pennsylvania. Some of the women will be joining us a little bit later, but we want to start with Judge Lori Dumas. She's coming from Philadelphia. She is actually running for the Commonwealth Court here in Pennsylvania. It is one of our appellate courts who are basically able to look at different issues from people all across Pennsylvania. And so we wanted to bring her on. She's also going to be joined by Wrenna Watson and Nicola Henry Taylor, who is running for our Court of Common Pleas, one of our courts of first instance, as well as Tiffany Sizemore Thompson. And we are also joined by Judge Tamika Lane, who was running for Superior Court. It is basically the court right before the Supreme Court, who here another court of appellate court here in Pennsylvania. I believe I introduced everyone, correct? So we got everyone. And then we'll also be joined by Leah Duncan, who is running for Magistrate Court here in Allegheny County a little bit later on. So welcome to the Power Hour. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll start with Judge Lane, then we'll go to Judge Dumas, then we'll go to Tiffany, Nicola, and Wrenna. Just want to talk about, why do you feel now is the time for your candidacy, for you to run, and how excited are you to be running right now when we're talking so much about Black women making history and making a change just globally?
Well, thank you so much. Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. I'm not great with this. So I think that this is a great discussion to have, and it's a shame that we're having this discussion in 2021 about first that Black women are still doing. But as you see, we are all out here and we are making sure that we are advocating on behalf of everyone and making sure that representation from the Black and Brown communities are actually heard, because our voices matter. I am running for Superior Court. You guys, I've been here before. You know my story. You know my grandmother saying that it's not about me. Specifically, it's not about you, honey, or it's not about you, child. And that's exactly why I'm running. I love being a judge on the Court of Common Pleas and hearing trials. I sit in the criminal trial division, and it's so important. But it's also important that when people come before the Court of Common Pleas, which Judge Dumas and we sit on together, we're colleagues, that when people have an absolute right to appeal before the Superior Court on criminal matters, civil matters, family matters, anything dealing with children, that they actually will go before a court that looks like them, understands them, that's from their communities. Because so many times, and we've heard this last year, that people were outraged with how the criminal justice system operated. I don't know if can you guys still see me?
Yes.
Okay, because I don't know what happened to this, but okay. And I don't know. And I think that part of that was so many decades, so many people feeling like their voices weren't heard, that their voices didn't matter. and that they didn't have representation. We know in the appellate courts, between the Superior Court, the Supreme Court, and the Commonwealth Court, there are 31 appellate judges in this Commonwealth, and only one is a person of color. And it's really a shame that we have to say that in this day and age. We should have a court, all courts, on the Supreme Court, on the Commonwealth Court, where we are represented. And it's not only a natural progression, but it's a necessity. It is an urgency to this. And that's why I love forums such as this, where we can talk about the importance of judges of color specifically, and Black women. And I love that, because we are very important. And it's time that people stop applauding us on November 4th on election days for saving races, and they applaud us on December 4th, on January 4th, and all of these things, because we are here being a voice for those who do not have a voice. So thank you so much.
Thank you for that, Judge Dumas.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to say hello to all of my beautiful sisters. It's nice to see you guys. We don't get to see you as often as we like, because we're on the other side of Pennsylvania. But when we do get a chance to see each other, it warms my heart to see. I've been on the bench for almost 20 years, and outside of Philadelphia, there are not many that look like me and look like Judge Lane. So I'm tickled pink that we have so many of us who are going to be able to join us in the fight, really, the fight for justice, because I believe that that's exactly why we're there. And for me, taking this step to the next level court, is really just about continuing the impact, because I know that the work that I've had the privilege of doing from the Common Pleas bench was necessary. It was, I consider myself just toiling in the fields, just getting the work done, making sure that, as Judge Lane said, voices are heard, lives are saved, right? And Black women, that's really who we are. If you just look back at our history, we are the mothers of civilization. And so we, carry that with us into seats like this, which is why it's crazy that we're not already there in some significant way. And so it is important for us to make sure that we are represented on every level of the court, all around Pennsylvania and all around the world, because I believe that, there is no real justice when our voices when we're not at the table. And so I am just, so humbled to have the opportunity to move up and to be able to touch systems. In the trial court, we touch lives, one by one. In the court, the Commonwealth Court in particular, I'll have an opportunity to touch the systems that impact the lives. And we've, done a lot of talking, over the past, not just the few months, but we know, about systems and how, the inequities in all of the systems that impact our lives are very significant. And courts impact those systems. And Commonwealth Court happens to be the one in Pennsylvania that does that. And so for me, it's just continuing the impact and having an opportunity to sit on the court. This court has no people of color and hasn't had one for at least the last 10 years. And in the history of this court has only had 3. And so it's time, if not now, then when? If not me, then who? And so I'm just excited to be able to see all of us move to the places where we know we are supposed to be at the same time.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you again to One Hood, who's been doing an amazing education series all through this election season. Thank you so much for this forum. And it's so important that we continue to keep our eyes on all of these races as we move into the fall. I was similarly as Judge Dumas and Judge Lane, And I'm sure Wrenna and Nicola, I was thrilled on primary night with the results for Black women across the Commonwealth. Right here in Allegheny County, 3 Black women won the primary and 6 women won the Democratic primary. And so I'm really honored to be here. When I was looking at that flyer for tonight, I thought, oh my goodness, that is so powerful. It's such a powerful image. And I am really humbled to just be standing with these other women and to be considered for the general election. And so I do think that this is a really important and unique moment in history. I think the United States is having, to grapple again, as it always does and as it always will, until it truly reckons with the history of race and racism in this country. And I think we're sitting at a really specific, unique time in history. And so I'm really thrilled to be able to be running at this time. And one of the things that brought me into the race back in the primary was the desire to hear all voices in the courtroom. And I said many, many times during the primary, over my 15 plus years of practice, I've seen too many of our mothers and grandmothers and great grandmothers be shouted down or politely shooed away in courtrooms, and that their lived experience and life expertise is not honored in those spaces. And so we need judges who understand the importance, not just of racial diversity, but diversity of lived experience, socioeconomic diversity, and who values all voices and what everyone brings to the table, not just entrenched system stakeholders. And so it's really, really important that we continue to keep our eye on this for the fall. We know here in Allegheny County that there are people who ran in the Democratic primary as Democrats who are going to try to run, who are going to run in the fall, and who will try to unseat some of the 9 of us. And so it's really important. That's why this forum that One Hood is providing is so critical, so that we continue to keep our eye on the prize, and we continue to work towards November 2nd. So thank you for having me here tonight, and I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you.
I think it's my turn. Thank you so much, One Hood, for creating this space. It feels so good to be sitting here and to be with these wonderful women judges and soon-to-be judges and lawyers. We don't get this sisterhood of people who understand the intersectionality of being Black and being a woman and being in this profession and fighting for justice. I believe the theme here is representation matters. It matters because if you or your child goes to court, you want them to see people, like Tiffany said, who understands their lived experience, or who are empathetic enough to learn or to understand that we don't all come from the same backgrounds, and that's important. In the whole history of Allegheny County, we have only had 4 Black women judges elected. We only now have 1 Black female judge, and so the time is, we are beyond the time, but I'm so excited that we have the opportunity to have 3 female Black judges and 6 women judges on this slate that is going forward. We know that it's important because things happen that shouldn't have happened. The reason why I'm a part of a group called the Pittsburgh Black Lawyers Alliance is because we had to fight because of comments that were made for a judge. We are continuing to fight because of things that are going on in our community, that we need to make sure that everyone at every decision point, from the tip staff in the courtroom, from the person who's doing the security at the gate, is they're knowledgeable about being trauma informed, about implicit bias, and all of the important things that, as I believe it was Judge Dumas said, Black women lead on. We lead on equality, justice, and fairness and equity.
Thank you.
Good evening. What a pleasure, what a blessing. Thank you, One Hood, for this wonderful situation, this opportunity that you're putting with us right now. I don't know if the thunder's going to overtake me, but also thank you for your endorsement. Thank you for getting me here. Thank you for being a big part of me getting here. And I have run before, many years ago, and more than one time, quite a number of times. Actually, I had both the Democratic endorsement as well as Governor Rendell's nomination for appointment in 2 separate election seasons, but I did not win the primary. And as we have all talked about already, each of the other candidates, Allegheny County, we've never elected more than 1 Black judge at a time. This is an historic moment in Allegheny County, and I am so honored and privileged and proud to be a part of it. And we are called, each of us is called, they're very talented women that are on this panel that have been gotten the nomination, and I'm proud to be a part of this group. But we've been called for such a time as this. When I wasn't really considering running. I've never not considered running from the time that I ran previously. And running is grueling. It's a grind. It's a lot of not nice things that go on during elections. But I never lost my spirit. But I didn't know if I wanted to do it again. And given the times that other candidates have spoken about, particularly Nicola with the judicial circumstances, given the times with the Black lives that are just taken without any mercy, without thought, with no convictions on officers who think that it's okay to do that. I had people call me, people in the community, people on Democratic committee, people on both sides, frankly, call me and say, well, Wrenna, we need you to run. And that was based on my history in 26 years of sitting as a judge in the minor judiciary and being fair and ensuring that Blacks, LGBTQIA persons, Muslims, Asians, Hispanic people, and white people too. It didn't matter. Fairness is for everybody. And I ensured that fairness in my 26 years from the bench in the minor judiciary. And I think that's the first step to making a change in the Court of Common Pleas, is that you come and bring that fairness to every case in front of you, for every person that stands in front of you, which, as we all know, in Allegheny County, if you're in the criminal division, 60 to 70% of those people are going to be Black people. And same with juvenile court. And so that's what I believe we all will bring to these circumstances. And it's very needed. It's very necessary. As I said, we have been called for such a time as this. We are the Esthers. Thank you. Love y'all.
Love you too, Wrenna. Thank you so much. My first question for the group is in the spirit of what Judge Lane said in her opening remarks. This idea that it's a shame, in 2021, we're having this panel. Obviously it's very, very long overdue. So in the spirit of not waiting until 21 to have another panel like this. I would just like to ask each of the panelists, there's a lot, of young African-American women who are considering law school, that are in law school. We have a very bright, newly minted attorney who is moderating this discussion. What advice do you have for those young women who may be considering following in your footsteps, and what experiences have you had that you want to share with a young person who's watching tonight that may be inspired by your journeys and want to follow in your footsteps in the future?
I'll start. Don't quit. I don't care if you fail a class. I don't care if you fail a year of law school or a year of whatever you're studying. If that is your desired profession, then you start it over again. You pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and you do it again. And because you're not measured, your success is not going to be measured by the fact that you failed. Your success is going to be measured by the fact that you did it again and you got it. And I don't mean to say that in the sense of, hey, that's where I am today, but that's exactly where I am today. And my life has been that. So, you have to have the perseverance, and don't let anybody tell you that you can't be, that you shouldn't. Don't. You decide what you want to do and what you want to be. During this time frame already, every time I met a young Black child, and not even just young Black children, I shouldn't say that, but when I met a young child and I'd say, well, what do you want to be? And they would tell me, most often it was not a lawyer or anything in the legal field, but that's okay. I would still invite them and tell their parent, hey, when I get on this bench, have your mom call. You can come sit on the bench with me so that you can observe what happens in a courtroom, because a lot of what children want to do is based on exposure. And other than coming and watching their parent get humiliated in a courtroom with shackles on and cuffs, they don't get the opportunity to come and see, hey, what's it like sitting up there on the bench? I have a young child, I call her my niece. She's not really my niece. And her mom said, hey, we're going to take you down on the bench. She said, and she showed her what a courtroom looked like. This child said, well, where's Aunt Wrenna going to sit? And her mom was laughing. She said, well, that's her seat right there. She said, oh, no, I'll be sitting in that seat. Where's Aunt Wrenna going to sit? So that's the type of enthusiasm that we need to generate in our children. And all children are welcome to come sit with me. I've done it as a judge in the minor judiciary because it's important that we do that. Not just for being a lawyer and not just for being a judge. There are so many jobs and circumstances that people can get into that are productive and positive that we all need help with. And so that would be what I would tell you. And Ryan, I have some encouraging things to tell you on, because it sounds like you're trying to pass the bar. I'm sure everybody can tell you, but I can give you what my, we can say that privately. I'll give you my theory on how to pass the bar.
Starting off in the fall, but eventually, yeah. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes.
If I can just jump in and expound on something that my soror said, because it's so true. It's about exposure. I would have never even gone to law school had I not been exposed to it in this program for poor inner city kids when I was in high school. And they partnered me with Judge Braxton and his law clerk. Also, they both went to Howard University. And every day they talked to me about law. That's right. That's how I got there. And they talked to me about Howard University. So it really just expanded my thought, because before that, I wanted to be a secretary. I didn't know anything about all that. I come from, a poor neighborhood where everyone was blue collar. My grandmother worked in the cafeteria. My grandfather was a janitor. My mom had 3 jobs. Like, everybody was doing, different things. But I want to say that once you actually get to law school, I agree to don't get up. I got pregnant when I was in law school, and everyone's like, oh, you're going to have to drop out. You're going to drop out. And I'm like, nope, I didn't have time to take off. I had my baby during Christmas vacation, and I was there first day when school started back in January. And that motivated me to hurry up. I had to power through. My grades actually went up because I now knew that I was a single mom and I had to take care of my daughter and I. And I've never taken a job, even though I ain't had no money, came from no money. I've never taken a job for money. I worked as a law clerk for a judge. I was a public defender, and we know they don't pay, and being a child advocate, you get small stipends. So everything I've done for, because I was passionate about it. And I think that's the most important thing. If you follow your passion, everything else is going to follow into place. And you have to be a service to others. Don't go to law school just to say, I'm going to go and make all this money. Maybe that's your passion. But my passion when I went to law school was to be of service. And I think that just resonates still with me today, that it's about service to others. When you get that law degree, you owe it to your community to give back and to reach back. And that's why I always have kids coming in, elementary school kids. We go around, and especially in Philly, we really are involved in the community. We go to Black churches. We're in schools. We have so many students who come to observe us, because I had never seen a Black woman judge. And Judge Dumas is on here when I saw her, when I appeared before her in court, I was like, oh my God, who is she? Like, I had never seen this. And it really showed me that one day I could be a judge. And that's because I saw Judge Dumas. So representation matters. It's so important.
I'm going to chime in, and I love what you guys said, and I love quoting a soror. I'm going to quote my soror, Kamala Harris, and she says, I eat no for breakfast. I love that quote because I will tell you, in this election, I was called to a meeting just so someone could tell me, no, you can't do this. You're not worthy of this. You need to wait your turn. And as our wonderful Judge Clark says, it's not your turn yet, baby discussion. So for those who are thinking about going to law school, I work for Duquesne, as does Tiffany, and a part of that is a pipeline. We need to be encouraging these students as soon as possible, like Judge Lane said, exposing them as soon as possible, encouraging them by just seeing us. People are inspired by us in ways we don't even know. They're watching us, and so let's just keep that going and teach these young people to eat no for breakfast.
Divine Nine, Alpha Chapter Divine Nine. I just had to throw that in there. Howard University, Alpha Chapter Divine Nine.
That's right.
Kamala Harris. Yes.
But we could, we have other things to talk about.
So happy to be a part as well. However, I just, first of all, I learned going on the trail, you kind of learn something. I learn something every time we have these kind of conversations. And for Judge Lane, something that I'm going to share that you didn't even know, because I didn't know that about you. I had my son in my last year of law school during Christmas break. Came back after Christmas break with him in that little snuggly thing. I took him to classes with me because I was determined to finish on time. And so that's just a testament to the strength. There's always a struggle. It doesn't have to be a baby, because I'm not glorifying that, right? But hey, it was what it was. And, but it could be money. It could be family issues, it could be housing issues. So many obstacles, that children of color or young people of color, and not just of color, but I can only tell you my experience and what I saw other, students of color struggling with something. In my law school class, especially the Black men, we started out with, 45 Black men, because we had a very small, I went to North Carolina Central, which is a small law school, right? So our classes were smaller than the larger schools. 45 Black men started out in my class. When we graduated, there were two. In 3 years, we lost, all of them except for two. That speaks volumes about the things that you have to persist through in order to get where you want to go, especially when it relates to law school, because law school is just a whole, Lord, it's, first year especially, we were told it's your jealous mistress, and absolutely or your jealous boyfriend. That it is. You've got to dedicate yourself. And what I say to young people, this is what you want. You got to just do it. Right. And I know it sounds cliche-ish, but believe it or not, in my yearbook for high school, my motto, I'd always want you to give a motto or your line or your philosophy was just do it. Just like Nike. I believe that when I was a kid, that's what you've got to do. You've got to just do it. You got to bite the bullet. You got to take the good with the bad. If this is what you want, you got to do it. Period. You've got to walk the journey. Don't get sidetracked. If you do, get back on track. But I also say, because I'm a person that I consider myself to be so real, right? You cannot sell out. You've got to stay true to you, right? And if this is who you are, your beliefs, if you're going into this because you want to save the world, or you're going into this because you really want to make an impact, you really want to make a difference, don't let people change your why. Right? Don't let people change your why, because that's when you get all off kilter and stuff just gets all messed up. Right? And so if you continue to follow your why, you can do anything. you can do anything. And even if the path is everybody's path is different to their why. But if you know your why, follow your why, stick to your why, and if law is your why, then do it, and do it 110%. Bring your A game all the time. Even if you don't end up at the top, still bring your A game, because it's going to pay off. I promise you. I was one of those who was told, too young, not your time. And this is when I was 20 years ago. Too young, not your time. You haven't tried enough jury trials. You haven't done this. You haven't paid your dues. You have whatever, right? If this is what you believe is your purpose, walk in it and walk boldly.
Absolutely. So I would say don't give up any dream that you have. If you can dream it, you can be it. And don't allow anybody to tell you that what you want is too much, too big, too far. I echo what everyone else said. Law school is not easy. It's very difficult, but it is worth it in the end. And it's only 3 years. That's what I tell my students. It's only 3 years of your life, and then one really bad summer, and then you're done. And then you have it for ever. And that's why when I thought you were studying for the bar, I was going to say, get off of here right now. You cannot be on here if you are studying for the bar right now. So, I echo everything that everyone else has said, but I actually just have so much faith in Black women. I went to Howard Law for law school. And, sometimes I think about the fact that I see stats about, how many lawyers are Black and how many Black women lawyers there are. It's a really low percentage of the profession. But honestly, I've never felt that way in all of the years since I graduated in 2004, because I know this amazing community of Black lawyers who I can talk to, I can struggle with, strive with, who have my back. And so I strongly encourage you to find a community of Black lawyers and to let them be your village, first law students, then lawyers, and to let them be your village and to be there to cry with and to get mad with. And I agree that you should follow your passion. I went to law school to become a public defender. People gave me all kinds of advice about why I shouldn't do that. And I never let anybody push me off my square. I wanted to become a public defender. I was a public defender at the best office in the country for a very long time. I was supervised there. I came here and was a public defender, and still the work I do is very close to that. And so don't let anybody push you off your square. Find mentors and who are doing what you want to be doing, and get good advice and follow it, and study really hard for the bar.
Absolutely. Thank you all for that input. Obviously some of that being useful for me, but also for a lot of our viewers out there as well. And so just as another question, I wanted to ask, because a lot of you have, some pretty extensive experience working in types of courts that place, an added emphasis on addressing individual needs of offenders and, on using diversionary programs as alternatives to incarceration, whether that be mental health courts, juvenile courts, etc. So I just wanted to ask, how those experiences, may have impacted your overall judicial philosophies as it pertains, to the use of diversionary programs and other alternatives to incarceration, and how that may impact, your service in these positions if elected.
May I?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I defer, Judge Dumas.
I don't want to monopolize the conversation. I'll be short. And I will say that I think that all of us sitting here know or believe, I'm comfortable in saying that we know that we can't incarcerate ourselves out of any social problem. We can't. Definitely not out of crime, out of poverty. I mean, just, we can't. And so we have to come up with unique, innovative ways to ensure that our communities are safe, but that our people are healed, because the majority of them that are in front of us for, you know, reasons that end up not just healed, but helped. I'll say helped, because, you know, you can't be healed from poverty, but there are so many societal issues that play into why people end up in our courtrooms, in our criminal courtrooms, in our juvenile courtrooms. And, you know, so, you know, the more innovative, the better. That's my philosophy. But I also, and this is for, you know, the women that are coming onto the bench. I want to say this to you too. Judges have a lot of power, right? And once you get in and you really learn your system, you learn the ins and outs, you learn the resources, you learn, you know, the people, places, and things, you don't necessarily need a diversion program to do the right thing, right? And I just want to plant that seed, because, you know, you may not have a lot of diversion programs. They may not, you know, work. You may not like them. You may, you know, find like there are some issues with them. There may be a population that's not being served through a diversion court. You don't have to wait for a diversion program to get started to do what you need to do as the judge for those people that come in front of you. And so I just wanted to tell you, it's great to have a system behind you. You know, when I started our human trafficking diversion court in Philadelphia, I had absolutely no support from our administration. Let me say that. I did have support, because when I started it, and it was actually Justice Doherty that gave me, you know, okay, listen, do what you do whatever you need to do, because I know you, I know your heart, I know your work ethic. When he left and administration changed, and administrations will change while you are sitting, so understand that, right? You've got to figure out stuff around sometimes the people who may seem like they are in your way. Right? So you may not have a program, but you can, if this is what I talk about, bringing your A game all the time, learn your system, learn what your system has, what it is, what it isn't, learn the players and the people who can help you get stuff done, even when a program is not set up. But Ryan, to answer your questions, I think that these innovative programs that work, that really get to the core of why people are in front of us as judges, are the best opportunities to serve the people that we say we want to serve. And that's everybody, the people standing in front of us, as well as the community.
So when I initially spoke in my introduction, I talked about being fair, and that people, and doing that for 26 years in my various minor judicial situations. One instance that I have talked about a lot in this campaign is that I had a case come in front of me. I was sitting as a judge of the Pittsburgh Magistrates Court, and a white gentleman came in front of me, a defendant. He was in his 40s. He looked like he was kind of stuck in the 60s, kind of looked a little hippie-ish. He had a great, big, gigantic bag of marijuana, bigger than we could imagine, filled with loosely packed marijuana. The standard charges for that are possession and possession with the intent to deliver. And when I called the case, the defense attorney and the district attorney said that they had a deal. Judges love deals, because you don't have to do anything but sign your paperwork. And, you know, I said, what's the deal? And they said, well, the district attorney's going to withdraw the possession with the intent to deliver, which of course is the one that has the heavier penalty and the worst of the two charges. And they'll proceed on the possession only. I said, okay, great. And I signed the paperwork, kept it moving. 2 months later, the exact same factual situation presented itself in front of me again, only this time it was a young Black man in his 20s. And I called the case, and then I sat there and I waited. I waited to hear the deal. I waited to hear the same deal that happened 2 months ago. But nobody spoke of a deal. Normally, as all of you all know, then you would say, okay, well, district attorney, proceed with your case. He would call his police officer and tell how he legitimately stopped the person and what he found in his legitimate stop. And I did not allow that to occur. I took control of the case and said, hey, and I will say, to the credit of this particular district attorney, he was not the same district attorney that had the case 2 months before. but it's still the same office. And in my opinion, the office should be held to fairness, not just one district attorney to the other. And I said, I'm going to take control of this case. You all made a deal on this case 2 months ago, exact same factual situation. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to effectuate that same deal here today. And I don't know if I threw it out. I don't know if I dismissed it or had them withdraw it. I'm not sure how I did it, but I got rid of the possession with the intent to deliver charge and allowed it to proceed only on the possession. And I will also say that and that's fair. I don't care, again, if it's a Black person, a LGBTQIA person, a Muslim, an Asian, a Hispanic, another white person. It doesn't matter. Fair is fair. You have to treat people the same and treat similar cases similarly. And the district attorney at that time, the supervising district attorney, came to me later, and he was one of the candidates in the race, one of the 39, and at that time, and he said, "Hey, Judge, I just want to tell you, I understand what you did, and I respect what you did." So people do respect you when you do the right thing, when you do what's right, and you have to not be afraid to do that. You have to have courage. And I know you all have that courage because you're here, because it took courage to be in this race this time. So, thank you.
I would like to talk a little bit about when I was an assistant district attorney, I handled the mental health court program, and that was the highlight of my career. And I appreciate Judge Dumas's her advice to us, because there aren't all aspects of mental health court I love. Every defendant has to plead guilty in order to be a part of that. They either have to be found guilty by trial or plead guilty. So, but what I love about the problem-solving courts is that they offer restorative justice in a way that we don't always have in other court systems. There's a continuum of care with social workers, specialized probation officers, specialized district attorney and DA that helps us to do a better job and to deal with the all of the individuals, the defendant and the victims and everyone involved, their special needs, their behavioral health issues, and making sure that we make our society better rather than moving cases along like numbers, and treating people with dignity and respect that are in the court.
So I'll say, I'm obviously, like, there would be no reason not to be a supporter of diversionary courts, that, we can't, I agree with Nicola that a conviction shouldn't be required, especially as Pennsylvania's expungement and sealing laws, with those laws as they are, and it being so difficult to get something off of your record once it's on there. So I think we really need to consider, at least in Allegheny County, having our problem-solving courts not require a conviction. But my real concern, especially in juvenile court, is, and something that I've talked about throughout this campaign, is bringing people into the system who don't need to be in the system. And oftentimes there are people who end up in diversionary courts because system stakeholders don't have the courage to say, I'll just dismiss this case because it shouldn't be here. This is not a case that should be in juvenile court. This is not a case that should be in criminal court. So let's just get rid of it. Instead, they'll say, well, let's just do a diversion, or let's just, just do a few hours of community service. No, let's just do the right thing, right? And save diversionary courts for people who need them, right? And for people who are eligible for them, and deal with other cases as they come. But that's really my biggest issue in terms of diversionary courts, is just making sure that they're not becoming catch-alls for people who shouldn't be in court altogether.
Right, because remember, that can be the back door to a long time in the system, getting in and not being able to get out. And so, and I can remember, and I spent 15 years in juvenile courts. That's where my heart is. And when I tell you, there were some cases where I was floored. And I have a real issue with controlling my facial expression. So lawyers knew, they knew, okay, we need to do something quickly. But when you arrest children for vandalism, for writing on a desk with a pencil where it was erased before they got the handcuffs on them, I see red, right? Like, that's absolutely ridiculous. It's a waste of resources. It's a waste of time, and it's putting kids and family in trauma that is unnecessary. So that is why I said you have the power to do the right thing. You don't need a program. You don't need somebody to tell you what to do. You know what to do because it's in you. So, yeah.
You know what's even worse, Judge Dumas? When you have a child, and juvenile court is also my passion and love. I represented thousands of children in both dependency and delinquency matters. And I had a case where a child was in a school for kids with disabilities, emotional disabilities. And this child burst past the teacher and kind of, he didn't knock her down, but he pushed her. And that case came to court. I'm sitting there like, are you kidding me? That school is designed for kids who have that as a problem. So why are you bringing this child here to court? That just didn't make any sense whatsoever. And it would be good to have a judge that could recognize that and say, no, I'm not going to put a delinquency on this child's record. We have to do something else. And so, no, I agree.
And I just wanted to chime in. I was going to talk about something else, but then I forgot because then I got caught up in how the conversation was flowing. But I definitely agree that, because I sit in criminal, that you have to make sure you approach each case and recognize that individual and their individual needs. Because we know, as Judge Dumas has already said, and I believe Wrenna as well, that when people come before our courts, a lot of them are already victims of trauma. We have to have a trauma-informed approach so that we don't re-traumatize them. Especially in criminal court, we know that it can really be rough. I was thinking about some things when I was a public defender, when you guys were talking about just sentencing. You know, I used to represent, of course, the majority of my clients were Black and brown people, but I did have Caucasian people as well. And I had one guy who was a skinhead, and he went on like a crime spree. He didn't want me representing him. You know, obviously he didn't want Tamika Lane from West Philly representing him, Black girl. And I was like, look, you don't get to pick your lawyer. You know, I'm here. I have to represent you, blah, blah, blah. So it wound up, he wanted to do an open guilty plea because he wanted the judge to decide his fate. He had a lengthy record. He got 1 to 2. I have never seen this judge give anybody 1 to 2 years for minor things, let alone a crime spree as wide as this. And it happened so many times. That's why I ran for Court of Common Pleas. That's why I left my job and sold my car, because I ain't had no money to run. But because of things like that, I represented a young lady. She was on probation. She was doing everything she had, to do. She was doing really well. She came to court just for a status hearing and to pay money. And she brought her child, but she was supposed to pay $50. She didn't have $50. And I told the judge, I said, I had $10. I had no money myself. I was like, Judge, she has $10 she can pay today. And the judge was like, that's disrespecting this court. And she thought that the lady brought her child as a ploy so she wouldn't get arrested. The judge said, call Child Protective Services to come take this child and lock the mother up. And I'm like, no, Judge. I was like, no. I was like, let me at least try to find someone to come get the baby. So the judge was like, all right, you have an hour to find someone to come get her baby. And you're the public defender, so you still got to do the list before me. So I'm doing a trial with the baby on my hip because I did not want the baby to go on Child Protective Services. And there's so many times when we talk about the judge controls, the judge absolutely controls these things. There's no need to put people in these situations. If you come from a situation where you understand $50 is a lot of money, and some people just don't have it, especially when they're doing everything they need to do. And that's why judges matter and who we put on these roles, because judges, unlike most politicians who are up for election every 2 or 4 years, we get elected to the Court of Common Pleas for 10 years, for appellate courts for 10 years. And then after that, we're just retained. So for so many people, it is a lifetime job. So you have to be careful who you put there, because we have to make sure that they understand everybody and different people. It doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, white, Black, who you love, what zip code, everyone deserves to be treated with that dignity and respect. And if you can fashion a sentence that works for that person, you should do that. Where justice is still served. You don't have to be inhumane. You don't have to be nasty. And you don't have to really just go out of your way to really just stick it to somebody, because justice is not served that way. And that's why I love being on this panel with these women today, because they get it and they are in the communities, and when they get on that bench, they're going to do what they've been elected to do, which is to make sure that justice is served for everybody.
Yeah, thank you. I know we're having a little bad weather in Pennsylvania, so we're going to wrap up soon. And kind of going off what Judge Lane was saying, I remember when I was in court, when I was interning, and we would have a lot of sovereign citizens, and I would watch as judges would tell the bailiffs to get ready because they knew something was about to happen. And so I'm wondering, especially since the January uprising, we've seen an increase in people being really frustrated with government, really not understanding the laws in front of them. How do you think judges can go about being more transparent, right? You may not be able to talk to every single person and go through a whole, con law, criminal law class when they're coming before you. But how do you think that there are some ways, especially if you're elected to the bench, that you would be able to engage and be more transparent with some of the clients that come before you? Because a lot of people, for good or for bad, really do not understand the procedures and the proceedings that are going on in front of them.
I'm just going to say, just do it. That's our job. I mean, seriously, and I know it doesn't happen, and I'm saying, I'm not being facetious. I mean, it's that easy. And we have an obligation to explain to people in our courtrooms what the heck is going on, regardless of who they are. And so it's, if it takes longer, if my day is longer, oh, well, that's my responsibility as the judge. Once again, I control the courtroom. And there are things where if I think that it is the lawyer's responsibility, I'm still going to go through my explanation, and then I'm going to tell the lawyer, you need to have further conversation with this person, and in juvenile court, it was parents were like deers in the headlights. They had no idea. We talk in acronyms, right? They have no idea what the heck is going on, but they stand there and they don't say anything because they're afraid. And so judges must learn how to communicate with the people that are in front of them. And if they can't, then they need to go take some lessons. They need to figure it out. They need to talk to their peers, colleagues, and figure it out. We have the responsibility to make sure that the people in our courtrooms know what is going on. And to me, it's just do it. That's what we have to do.
I wish all the judges would be as wonderful as Judge Dumas. We have judges that are on the bench that will not be as wonderful as she is. And I think one thing that our district can do, and I think Judge Clark, our president judge, is thinking about doing, is more civic engagement. There's ways we can engage the community by being a part of high school discussions, being more transparent in our website, using technologies and apps, telling people we want you on our juries, we want diversity on our juries, and being engaged in many facets of the community, such as being on committees that include police officers and citizens and people who are activists like Tim Stevens and others. So there are ways judges can be involved and can be explaining on a larger scale, this is what the Court of Common Pleas does. This is why it's important, so that people don't only care about the court when they have to come to court. And maybe also having trainings around the judges who aren't as great as Judge Dumas and Judge Lane and Wrenna when she's in the minor judiciary. And so I know one of the trainings Judge Clark is going to be doing is the trauma-informed training, and some of that has gotten kind of put to the side because of the pandemic. But there is a lot that courts can do and should do to make sure that people understand that the judges are doing a better job.
And I just want to piggyback on that. You're absolutely right. I was actually co-chair of this program called Advancing Civics Education, where judges and lawyers, we did it with the Bar Association. We went into schools and we actually taught civics. And you're absolutely right. We need to do that because kids really want to be change agents. They just don't always know how. And especially when all this stuff happened within these last few years, they really were hungry for that knowledge. And I don't know why the school stopped teaching it. I don't know, but you're absolutely right. We did that. And we do a lot in the community, making sure they are aware. Even when you at the hairdresser, you at the barbershop, talk about why juries matter, you know. And then by the time I leave getting my hair done, they be like, oh, you right, Miss Tamika, I ain't think about it like that. All right, I'm gonna go next time. Like, we need to just be having real conversations with people we just interact with every day. Yes, we can be doing programs like I do with ACE or on panels, but let's just do it. You waiting in the line, you know, at the dollar store, you know, hey, you know, I wear my pen. You registered to vote? And then start talking that way. However you get them, that's how you need to get them, because it matters and people need to understand why.
So I think that the training that both Judge Dumas and Miss Nicola Henry Taylor have talked about, I think that training should be mandatory for all judges. And it should not only include training in diversity, but training in respect, how to treat people with respect. I know that as a mental health hearing officer, which I've been doing for 26 years and I'm still doing, I've had a public defender tell me, you know, Wrenna, you treat everybody with respect. You know, his clients, his clients have mental illness, severe mental illness, and some of them don't know how to really act in a courtroom. As Judge Dumas talked about, the parents, sometimes it's their first time there. They don't have a clue about what's going on or how to handle this whole process. And I take the time to explain the process if that's necessary. I certainly treat each one of them with respect. And when I'm giving my decision, I explain why I am making the decision that I'm making, hoping that, you know how when you're with your children, you hope Kahari sees your son out on the street and tells him those same things that you already told him, but he thinks he knows more than his parents do. So, but you hope that somebody else out there is teaching your child. So I use that opportunity from the bench to teach, to talk to, whether it's a respondent or a defendant, but to tell them, this is what we want from you. This is the goals that we have for you, and that we hope that you can go out and do, you know. But whether it's, hey, you need to stay here a little while and get a little more treatment. But the purpose of that is so that when you do go out, you're fully stable and you're not going to be a part of the revolving door and just keep coming back in, so that you can go out and be productive. And so I think we have to take the time. And yes, it might make your day longer. And I know there's attorneys, because they've been in front of me, that all they want is a speedy trial. They don't care. They don't care what your decision is. They just want a speedy trial so they can get on to their next thing. But I think it's important for us to take our time, because the people in front of us this is an opportunity for them to decide, to make a decision, to make a choice that this is not going to be my life tomorrow or the next day or at the end of the circumstances that I'm in right now.
Yeah, all that is just so powerful for me as the one person in this discussion that is not a lawyer nor pursuing going to law school, but as Miracle said, my spouse is an attorney and also one of the candidates running for judge with Nicola and Wrenna and Tiffany as well. As many folks who followed the news the last couple of years, me and my wife had a very highly publicized situation in Detroit where we had our own run-in with the Wayne County, Michigan criminal justice system, and it was like such a education for me and my wife, who is a licensed attorney here in the state of Pennsylvania, and which struck me so deeply and made us want to fight the situation, because it was this kind of a situation where kind of just the typical things from my point of view, racial profiling. They didn't know who we were, and because of who we were, the Pittsburgh media got involved. So then they had to what I consider do the CYA move and create a false narrative of what happened, to explain what happened to us. But I say all that to say that the thing that struck me the most is, like, if we weren't educated, resourced people, you know what I mean, like, our the result of that would have been completely different. Because it was definitely, it was anyone who was following it was like on the news every day for like 3 weeks, and the portrayal the way that the criminal justice system used the media, because like they'll just put out a statement, and then the media would just say, okay, well, this is what happened, and, in the time that we had to do to like prepare and go over and read stuff and, prepare, for testimony, prepare for direct, prepare for cross, all this stuff, it was like, for me, it was almost like getting like a half semester, of law school myself, to prepare, to go through that and the anxiety, and the fear and, they offer, they offered me this deal, and it's like, do you take this deal, even though, you really didn't do anything, and people that are very close to you is like, oh, just make it go away, and I know, all of you have experienced that, from being attorneys all the way to those who are on the bench now. And it was just such a mind, blowing experience, to go through that. And then, when I was acquitted, I was thinking to myself, like, if I didn't have the resources, to be able to fight this, I would have took that L, months ago, had my reputation, ruined, and who knows, where I would be, and who knows, if Chelsea would have been able, to even pursue, the judicial office that she's running for, on the ticket with Nicola, and Wrenna, and Tiffany, because that thing could have went, completely, left. And I know, if you don't have resources or you don't have, education, I could just only imagine how many tens of thousands of people in Wayne County, Michigan, have been through the same situation, had to take that loss, had to have something on their record, they put us through the ringer when we went to the arraignment. They actually put us, in general population for 10 hours, just to prove a lesson, and you're just there, and it's all poor people. It's all poor people. It's Black, white, Latino, Asian, and they were all poor. And, they had no way out, they had no way out, they were waiting on a public defender, like you said, who has 50, 60, 70 cases they have to get through in a short period of time. And, we had an attorney actually who was from Michigan, but graduated from Pitt Law, who was very focused on our case and was spending a lot of time. You just see all these little things. For me, being on the other side, who's never taken, a law school class, you just see how different it is if you have resources versus that you don't, and how tilted, the justice system. I would just love in the last few minutes, just what your perspective is just seeing like day in and day out. I mean, that has to be, it has to be heavy. It was heavy for me, obviously, because I was going through something, but just taking myself out of it and just thinking about like the system, I was like, man, how many people have been through the system that had no business going through this, but only because of the neighborhood, their zip code, or, the fact that they only made, went to 10th grade, and it's just like, that's not how the system's supposed to work. We shouldn't have two justice systems for those who, daddies, have, whose daddy is Daddy Warbucks, and the folks whose daddy is not Daddy Warbucks. But I would just love to hear, your personal, perspectives, with whatever you can say without obviously, jeopardizing, your ability, to serve in your next role. But yeah, that was just something that still just strikes me to this day. And I felt lucky, and the last thing I'll say is, Wrenna, Ryan Miracle, my father, and my father will be 95 next month. And when the deal was offered to me, I didn't want to take it, but I called him because that's when he's my confidant. And he said, you have an obligation for every African American in this country, who's been screwed over, that hasn't been able to have the resources to fight, and he was born in 1926. And he's like, hey, I so many times people have been in these same scenarios. And he's like, and it's your obligation to see, through this process, no matter, how, it was just so much anxiety, so much fear, and it was so public, I just wanted to also just share that with you as someone, who was a defendant in the criminal justice system. And thankfully I was able to be acquitted. And one of the main reasons was of the jury of my peers in Wayne County, it was only one white person. Everybody else was black. And it was an African-American foreman, who was right about my age. And you could tell by the body language during the trial that they were mad as hell about what I was having to deal with, the torment that I was going through, and how they were perceiving how the situation went. And that definitely was a big deal in the result, because it was folks that could relate to the experience that I went through and saw, like, this dude didn't do anything wrong. Like, this dude's getting railroaded. But it was just a powerful experience. I always try to share with people of my perspective, in the system and the education, that I got, during that time.
Well,
I would applaud you for doing that. I think it's important that we share our experiences and not hide them, because it helps other people. And as you said, it's, as they say in Washington, D.C., you have the haves and the have-nots. And the have-nots are the ones that you see in court that are flooding the court system, flooding the CYF system. And so it's important to stand up, to let people see that, but also to share your story, and that's important. And I appreciate your sharing it. And I love your dad. And he was right. He told you right.
I think you brought up another important issue is you had a jury of your peers, but unfortunately every day in Allegheny County, there are people that could be going to a jury trial that do not have a jury of their peers, nor do they have a judge or others in the courtroom that look like them. And I do think that's matters. When I've talked to clients about going to trial, my immigrant clients, my Muslim clients, that's a part of our discussion. What's the jury gonna look like? If we do a bench trial, will the judge understand this nuance that isn't the truth that's in the affidavit of probable cause that the police officer wrote as the gospel truth, as you pointed out? So it brings us back again to representation matters, and the fact that those who do not have resources and are facing a system that doesn't have representation, that is a huge problem. And I've seen CYS dependency cases where a similar set of facts and a Black single mother, her child's removed, and a wholly different outcome because of a middle class family that I represented. They had their child back, and so there's so many issues layered into what you just said, but I also applaud you for sharing your story. And I think together there's work we can do as a community to try to make these systems work better.
And I just want to echo on that. I mean, I know I've had this discussion with your wife, and I'm so glad that you shared that today, because I do think that somebody who's on here is listening, and they will be impacted in that. And that's a message that they needed to hear. That's why when you talked about just what the courtroom looked like, and Nicola, you're exactly right. Like my courtroom, I make sure it's diverse. When you come in, you're going to see Judge Tamika Lane, but I also make sure that people who interact with you in my courtroom also are various people. I have someone who's Hispanic in my courtroom. I have someone that's LGBTQIA. I have like a representation. If you come in the Philly courtroom, I feel like it should look like Philly. And I know when I was a public defender, I didn't see that often. And I made it a point, because when I got elected, they actually gave me who my court staff would be. And I said, no, that's not what I want in my courtroom. And they allowed me to pick the staff to have that diversity. And I think that is so important, because when you walk into a courtroom, you need to see someone who represents you. And that's why, going back when we talk about a jury of our peers, that's why it's so important that we need to go back in our communities, our family, our friends, and or groups, and talk about the importance of jury service. How many people we know, like, I ain't going, I don't want that $9, I don't have time for that, or blah, 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 whatever. These are the very people that need to show up, because more than likely, again, we're all connected. We're going to know someone who's been impacted by this system. And it's not, I used to tell my friends so many times about it when I was a PD, and it was like, yeah, whatever. And then as soon, like one of my best friends, when his son got arrested, he's like, oh my God, Meek, you're right. This is what you've been saying. I said, that's what I'm trying to tell you. We have to care about the system now, not just when it's personal. You know what I mean? We had to make it better for everybody. So that's my 2 cents. I know Judge Dumas wanted to get in, and I know we're wrapping it up soon, so I ain't want to take up all the time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, but also, I mean, you're right. I mean, everybody is right. I mean, there are so many stories like yours, Kahari, that that I'm sure all of us have either as lawyers or as judges, and and it's awful. It really is. I mean, there have been many times that in my gut I knew something ain't right. Which is why, like I said, you go back to, whether it be the judge, even with the jury, the judge still controls the courtroom, right? I mean, the judge still controls the courtroom. And, to know that you have people that are in front of you that shouldn't be there, to know that you had, and this is, and I've been through criminal, family, and now, civil. Even in the civil side, it doesn't end over there, because your case was criminal. So now the flip side of that is when it's time to now get money for that experience, there's a difference in the dollars that come down as a result of injustice as well. And so I sit sometimes and I just, as we started this conversation, and Judge Lane talked about, here we are in 2021 and we're still having this conversation. Sometimes in my courtroom, I sit there and I'm like, I cannot believe we are still here. And the microaggressions and just the unwillingness to see the whole picture, right? And sometimes I sit there and as I'm listening to evidence and I'm like, are they serious? Like, this is really what you're trying to get me or the jury to believe? And I will say I've been blessed to have had juries, because I leave every case and go back and talk to the jury after they've rendered their verdict, because I want to know what they were thinking. I want to know what they were grappling with. I want to be able to answer some of those questions. And I will say there's only been one jury that I was really sad about, that I was like, wow, they missed it. But for the most part, which is why people do need to sit on the jury. There are people, they think, they read, they listen, and the people on the jury that may not be as well versed, I have had the experience of having other jurors to be able to not coerce them, but to be able to explain things that they may not have understood. But to have people in our courtrooms that we know deserve justice, and we don't ensure that they get it, I think is worse than criminals who actually commit crimes and come to the courtroom. I just think that when we don't ensure that justice is served, and we have the ability, the authority, the power to do so, and we don't do it, we're no better than the worst criminal that we have ever experienced. So, my hat goes off to you and your wife for persevering. I know it was not easy. It's not easy when you are public and you have something that's like, that's not even who we are, right? But you stood up for every person who could not stand up for themselves. You too, in that situation, and I commend you for that. And I thank God that it went the way that it went, and you have a story and a testimony to provide to others that are similarly situated. So thank you for that.
And thank you so much. And the last thing I'll say before I pass it back to Miracle is I will say, as a layman, I suggest everybody check out is it called Wadir, the jury selection process?
Oh yes, the Wadir, yes.
Yeah, man. Wow, man, that was deep. That was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That was interesting. It was the questions were being asked, and I remember there was one, potential juror. They were like, oh, police officers never do anything wrong. I can never see a police strike. Strike. It was just such an interesting, process. And I think if more people had an opportunity to see those processes without having the heaviness of actually having to be a participant in that process, that would be a very, very valuable education. You know what I mean? Because it was definitely interesting, but I had so much riding on it. I really couldn't enjoy it like a spectator. But it was we started with maybe 20 some, 30 people. And it just whittled down, and then they were striking people, we were striking people, and it was like, wow, this is they never teach you about this in civics class. You know what I mean? This is fascinating. It's entertaining. If people learn more about this, they would want to be on juries, because you can only strike so many, and that's why you need people that represent the broad spectrum, of a community, to make sure that the community is truly represented in that part of the process as well.
And I want to interject because I do pick juries. I'm actually picking a jury tomorrow, and they are open, but because of the sensitive nature of a lot of my juries, I do they are private by consent by the attorneys, because I do a lot of child rapes and things of that nature, and so I have to ask some of those personal questions, right, about people. But I've definitely had people come in and just watch as we pick juries, because I think that is a really good suggestion, because a lot of people don't know how it goes, and it can be confusing, but it's so interesting as well. And hopefully they can know that when people hear your story, how important actually showing up and serving actually is, and what it means to have a jury of your actual peers. It matters.
And I think another important factor that we as people in the judiciary have to deal with, where Kahari and Chelsea had the blessing of having the ability to have a jury. Again, the haves and the have-nots. Most have-nots don't have that benefit. They don't have the money to be able to have a jury trial. So then it becomes up to the judges and to be able to discern. And Judge Lane talked about, reading the factual situations that's presented, as well as police officer testimony, that, well, aren't you going to believe a police officer? Judge Dumas talked about the, oops, I forgot what I was getting ready to say, but excuse me, we all have those moments, I think. But the important factor is that as judges, we have to discern when. That's what Judge Dumas said. She said, sometimes you have this feeling that something's just not right. And you may have facts in front of you that show that, well, the facts say it is right. But there's something inside of you that there's something about this that's not right. And you have to be strong enough to do the right thing, to do what you know is right in a circumstance. And that's not easy. I mean, even in my minor judicial position, there are times when I feel like, wow, am I making the right decision? And sometimes I leave not knowing if I did or if I didn't. And it's difficult. But you have to do it. And so that to me is something that's an important aspect of sitting on the bench and adjudicating cases, is being able to discern and to do things that is different than what is sitting in front of you, what all of the appearances say. And it's not easy, and I know it's not going to get any easier. In fact, I know it's going to get tougher, as I'm sure Judge Dumas and Judge Lane already are very well aware of, and so we'll get that experience.
And I just wanted to real quick, because I used to work in the public defender's office in Philadelphia, and we did a lot of jury trials. And even throughout COVID, when we started doing trials again, it was the public defender's office who were doing all the juries. And we have an excellent office in the sense that they have investigators, they have social services that can help with, their defense or mitigation and sentences and things of that nature. So again, I just wanted to put that out there, that if you can afford to hire an attorney or not, you still have an absolute right to a jury trial, and people get them every day, just in case someone is watching and they don't think they can.
I just wanted to thank all of you for coming on, braving the tornado warning and scare and the thundering and lightning to talk with us. Even me personally, as someone who encountered a lot of anti-Blackness, and I was like, you know what, maybe the legal field is not for me. Y'all just really did give me a lot of inspiration in hearing your stories. And so I do thank you all so much for just coming on and just talking. I wish you all the best of luck with your campaigns. We put your contact information in our chat. So please keep in contact with us, and always feel free to come back on the programs whenever you would like. And thank you all so much for joining us and staying these extra 30 minutes with us. We are very, very eternally grateful to all of you. Before we wrap, is there anything that you would like to say before you go? If not, you can just turn off your camera and leave the studio. But I want to, because you've been so gracious, I want to give y'all any last words you would like to say to wrap up and talk about your campaign.
Get in touch with your campaigns, or find out more about your candidacies, and if folks want to get involved, and stuff like that.
So for me, there are 4 of us who are running statewide. We really need every one of those seats, from the Supreme Court, down to the, Supreme, Superior, and the 2 Commonwealth Court positions. So, I'm just encouraging everyone, if you want to know more about me in particular, you can go to my website, which I put in the chat, which is judgedumas2021.com. You can also go to the state website of PA Dems and find out about all of us, the candidates that are running. Our democracy is, at stake. I mean, our lives depend on this election. And I'm not just saying that because I'm running. I would say that if I weren't running, because it's the truth. We have to get out the vote. We have to encourage everyone that we know to get out to vote, whether it's by mail, whether it's early, whether it's at the polls, just vote. We need everyone to come out and vote. And I don't care, vote for who you vote for. It doesn't matter. You vote Republican, Independent, Democrat, but use your voice. Don't give up the opportunity to use your voice for what you think is necessary to save our democracy. So thank you.
I would like to add, for the Court of Common Pleas, Allegheny County, while we're excited that it was historic, let us not rest. Let us get back to work, because there is one Democrat at least that's already putting out ads. I just saw a video yesterday of a Republican who says they're going to be recruiting conservative Democrats. I don't know exactly what that definition is. However, I think that if we want to keep what we saw here tonight, which I would hope that we do, because I think that it was so inspiring to see all of us here tonight. If we want to do that and have people who will be servant leaders for every single person in our county, we need to continue to work hard. And thank you, One Hood, and all of the wonderful grassroots groups that have helped us and that I know will continue to help us.
Thank you.
And thank you, One Hood. Thank you, Miracle. Thank you, Kahari. Thank you, Ryan. You all are awesome. You're just wonderful. And Judge Dumas, Judge Lane, Nicola, Tiffany. She didn't come on, but Leah, I thought she was going to come on. And it's such an honor and a pleasure to be at this point with you, to be Democratic nominated candidates with each of you. And I look forward to us winning, and that we get to continue with our relationships and grow all of our relationships. So there's a lot to be done. I think that people talk a lot about reform. We need reform at every level of every agency that's out there. Yeah. And we need people like you in One Hood to come tell us what your ideals are about that reform. So I certainly welcome that, and I know everyone else here does as well. But thank you. God bless each of you and your families, and thank you all so much.
Thank you. And I just want to interject, and I say ditto, ditto, ditto to what everyone else has said. But I know that you guys are really active in the community, and so are your members. And this election, as you already heard, is so important, from the top of the ticket to the Supreme Court, all the way to the other candidates down to the minor courts, because courts matter. We've seen the constant attacks on courts in our democracy, and the courts have been a constant barrier. We have a strong statewide slate of 4 judges running for Supreme Court, Superior Court, and 2 for Commonwealth Court. And we need each and every one of you to really get people fired up. I know that I agree with Judge Dumas that you can vote, you need to vote no matter what it is, but hopefully you will be persuaded and you will come vote for us, because we need everyone going into their neighborhoods and their networks talking about the courts and why the courts matter. You know, from the Court of Common Pleas, they can affect your money, your children, your liberty, your life, you know, all of it. And courts are important. When we look at the statewide judicial candidates, there's already been a reservation of $1 million buy for TV against this Democratic slate of 4 judges. And we are out here making sure that we touch everybody and reach everybody, because we know that everyone's voice matters. And if you can help convey that to your friends, your family, and your networks, we would greatly appreciate it. So thank you. And Judge Spurgeon, he did say that to tell you guys hello. He got caught in that storm as well with his roof or something. But I know that you are great friends with him, and he wanted me to convey that.
Yeah. Always shouts out to Judge David Spurgeon. Always representing McKeesport to the fullest.
Yes, he is. And Judge Maria McLaughlin is not here, but she's running for Supreme Court.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We will have some more forums, I guess, breaking news later on. But we wanted to have just these great women to join us tonight. And, you know, we always like to give people their flowers, like, while we're here. And I understand there are differences, but we're going to have like more forums, and we'll have those candidates on as well. So we are not ignoring them. We will be reaching out to them soon as well.
And we need unity. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much to our great panel. As they go, I want to thank them so much, like, for joining us this evening. Like we said, it's the One Hood Media Network. We're always striving to bring you programming that is relevant. So if there's someone you haven't seen on the program, if there's a conversation that you believe we haven't had yet, please reach out to us. We actually do reach out to people from all political parties, invite them on. Whether they decide to come or not is their choice, but we are always reaching out to people regardless of their political affiliations and backgrounds. We have a lot of great programming coming up for you this week. We're this Wednesday, as all Wednesdays with the Media Network, we do have this week of white supremacy, talking about how white supremacy exists and things that you can do to combat it in your communities and in your personal life. On Thursday, it's still a stressful time for a lot of us, where we're going back in the mask mandate. We want to make sure you're protecting your mental health. So we have On Tilt with Julius Boatwright and Mama Brown every Thursday, talking with mental health professionals, so that you can actually have some tips and tricks and some resources for you this weekend. Some of us are going to DC with the Black Voters Matter Fund to advocate for the People Act, so we can ensure that we have elections that are protected and expansive, and that we all are able to engage in this democratic process. We want to again thank you so much for joining us this evening. And for a close, I'll turn it back to my illustrious co-host, Kahari Mosley.
Yeah, again, I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. Like everyone said, it was such a powerful visual, for the flyer, to, just seeing, that panel of, just Black excellence. I know it was inspiring for myself. I'm sure it was inspiring for people, across, the spectrum, all folks. And even, for Ryan, who's, about to go to law school. I know he'll be able to learn a lot and be able to have like, how cool is it for a future young white male attorney to be able to have Black women legal mentors. In the past, because of the dynamics of this country, that wasn't as possible as it is today, and we didn't even get a chance to explore what would that mean for the future of the legal system, to be able to have, young white attorneys being mentored by experienced African Americans that can give them a different perspective from their life experience, so that we can continue to make the system, more fair. So I just really, want to thank everybody, and I'm gonna, pass it, to the youngest member, of our group, who will be leaving us in a couple months. To begin his own journey, into the legal profession. I'll let you close us out before, because well, actually, Miracle, you already covered, what's coming this week. So Ryan, and congratulations for those who didn't know, Ryan has been accepted into law school, and he'll be leaving for New York later this year to start his first semester. With apparently, it sounds to be pretty brutal by all the experts who are on the panel tonight. So good luck with that. I'll be watching football and writing raps, and hopefully you can send me a couple beats in between.
I was gonna say, yeah, I'll still be doing that on top of it all too. So it's gonna be an extra busy
Right.
few months. But yeah, I mean, you should know too from your informal half a semester of law school or whatever it was you said. Right? Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Kahari. Yeah, just to echo some of what you were saying. Thank you to all of our great guests we had on tonight. Obviously a lot of that advice wasn't directed at me. I wasn't the target audience, but a lot of it was still. A lot of it's really applicable across the board. Yeah, so that's always really valuable, and I thank them for that. And as Kahari mentioned, it is just really inspiring for folks across the board. That dynamic is now possible that you talked about, where it's a lot of more experienced Black attorneys, female attorneys, just from all sorts of different backgrounds, who are able to give guidance to aspiring lawyers of my background, and vice versa, to have that exchange going both ways, and is really crucial in terms of everyone across the board being able to have more of that diverse perspective in in whatever field of law they go on to practice. Yeah, so just thanks again to all of our great guests tonight, and I think that was really informative and enjoyable for for folks viewing, hopefully regardless of whether or not they're involved in the legal profession at all or have any aspirations in that regard. But I think especially for those folks as well. So thank you all.
Thank you. Yeah, so thanks everyone for joining us, all the viewers, the folks who will be catching the replay on YouTube, Facebook, and all the platforms that we're on, and best of luck to the candidates that joined us. And like they said, there obviously was a ton of celebrations on May 18th, but that was the first round. Like the Sixers, they got out of the first round. Now we got a whole other round to go. We got to get past that round, and as much as we want to stay positive, like Miracle, you know what I mean? There's no moral victories, in November. You know what I mean? It's too much on the line. So just stay, as we always say, stay engaged, stay involved. If you're not registered to vote, do so before mid-October. I forgot the exact date, but definitely get your registration in. Learn about the candidates, learn about what's at stake. And play your role, in this process, because, we had, a panel of very brilliant people, but without the everyday folks, they can't, they can't do their job, and, we can't, experience their brilliance, in full color, without everybody playing their part. You know what I mean? So don't go out like Ben Simmons. Go out like Trae Young.
Do not organize for elections like Doc Rivers coaches. Not necessary, please.
So a little sports reference, me and Ron are big sports fans, But a lot of people who are into politics, like sports and politics, are very similar. If you like,
they go hands
and intensity, you know what I mean. So
they go hand in hand.
What do you say?
Kyrie Irving. I said they go hand in hand because shout out Kyrie Irving. Y'all know I love Kyrie. He had the Manhattan DA candidate come and support him at the game so she could get exposure for her candidacy. So like I said, politics and sports, they go hand in hand. From Jesse Owens, Muhammad Ali, all the way till now. So it's great to see people who are engaged and civically minded and aware, but also are athletes. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Big election in New York tomorrow.
I am happy. I will say I am happy Pennsylvania elections are not like New York mayoral race.
The ranked voting is interesting. That's wild, man. The ranked voting is wild. Like how they're all the percentages and how that's all going to go together. have fun with that, New Yorkers. That's going to be a long night counting multiple rounds of voting, but
yeah. So I guess it's another positive for Pennsylvania. We do not have that type of ranked choice voting for our elections, because I was confused just trying to figure out how you get the top 4 people if it's not just like flat percentage. But
one of the interesting things is they did that in San Francisco, and that's actually how London Breed got elected. The African American woman who's the mayor of San Francisco, she came in second, but the other candidate had more first place votes, but she kind of had more second, third, and fourth place votes, and then it ultimately outranked the first candidate, and that candidate tried to sue, and it didn't work. But so it's kind of interesting, because you could say, if I'm not your number 1, I'll be your number 2 or 3, and I guess it makes campaigning a little bit different, because you don't want to make everybody mad by attacking people, because you might be somebody's second or third choice. That might, because like if you just attack somebody, then they're like, I'm not voting for this person. But it's like, I like this person more. I kind of like that person, so I'll make them number 2. But it's still, that's still difficult. That's the old way is a little bit more simple. A lot more simple, actually.
I think even proportional voting would have made it more simple, but the fact that you have to have, because they have over 10 candidates. So the amount of tallies, whoever that mathematician is, somebody give them food, drinks, or something by the end of this week, because they're going to have a long 48 hours.
Absolutely. Well, and with that note, definitely check out, the results from tomorrow in New York. I'm sure we'll be talking about it next Monday, and stay tuned for all of the programming from the One Hood Media Network. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. On behalf of my colleagues, Ryan White and Miracle Jones, we will be signing off till next Monday. Stay engaged, stay involved, and the pandemic isn't over yet. So stay safe.